Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner Stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I found a voicemail from my wife on the dark web. She died 10 years ago. Alright, so I don't usually post on Reddit, but this has been eating me alive for the past few weeks. I figured someone out there might be able to make sense of it. Even if I can't. I should warn you up front. This story gets weird. Really weird. Like, you might think I'm insane. Weird. But I swear on my life, this is 100% true. For some background, my name's Jake. I'm 36. I live alone in a quiet suburb, just outside Chicago, and I work as a freelance graphic designer. Pretty normal guy, right? I guess I've always had a curious streak though. I'm the kind of person who'll stay up until 3 a.m. clicking through random Wikipedia pages, falling down internet rabbit holes about things like haunted places or unsolved mysteries. Harmless fun, right? But a few weeks ago, I took it too far. It was one of those nights where you can't sleep, and instead of lying there staring at the ceiling, I decided to hop online. I'd been hearing all this stuff about the dark web, like those clickbaity YouTube videos where people buy mystery boxes full of creepy stuff, or stories about hackers selling illegal information. I've always been skeptical about that kind of thing. It felt like one big urban legend, you know. Still, I was curious. I found a guide online about how to access the dark web safely. It was all way easier than I expected. Download Tor, set up a VPN, and boom, you're in. Most of what I found at first was pretty boring, honestly. A lot of sketchy looking marketplaces selling fake IDs, credit card numbers, that kind of stuff. It wasn't until I stumbled onto a forum called the Elysium Archive that things started to feel off. The forum was password protected, but someone had conveniently posted the login credentials in another thread. The layout was simple, just plain black with a list of discussion topics. The titles were cryptic: lost frequencies, temporal anomalies, echoes of the past. Most of it sounded like pseudoscience or conspiracy theory nonsense, but one thread caught my eye. Voices of the departed. The description underneath was short. Audio files recovered from unknown origins, for educational purposes only. Something about it gave me chills. I don't know if it was the phrasing or just the way it seemed so matter-of-fact, but I couldn't look away. Against my better judgment, I clicked on the thread. There were dozens of posts, each one linking to an audio file. Most of the file names were random strings of letters and numbers, but the captions hinted at what they were. Recovered voicemail, 2009. Unidentified radio transmission, 1974. 911 call, classified. I don't know what I was expecting, but I clicked on one of the files out of morbid curiosity. It was a voicemail, like the kind you'd get on your phone. The audio quality was terrible, crackling static, distorted voices, but I could just make out a woman sobbing and saying, "It's not safe here. They won't let me leave." I had to stop the playback. My heart was racing, and I felt sick to my stomach. It sounded real, like something I wasn't supposed to hear. That's when I saw it. A post near the bottom of the thread, marked with a red exclamation point. The caption simply read, Jane Doe, 2013. Now, here's the thing. My wife's name was Jane. She died in 2013. I wish I could say I closed my laptop and walked away. I wish I could say I shrugged it off as a coincidence, turned on Netflix, and went back to my normal life. But that's not what happened. The moment I saw that post, Jane Doe, 2013, I felt this knot in my stomach, like my body already knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I clicked on it without even thinking, and as soon as the page loaded, I regretted it. The post was simple. No description, no context. Just a single link to an audio file. It was labeled Recovered Doc Voicemail JD 2013.wave JD Jane Doe. The file size was small, less than a megabyte, but my hand hovered over the link for what felt like forever. It didn't make any sense. My wife, Jane, had been dead for 10 years. Her death wasn't some big mystery either. She'd been driving back from a late shift at the hospital when an 18-wheeler ran a red light and hit her car head-on. The police said she died instantly. I'd seen the wreckage myself. There was no room for doubt. But here I was, staring at a file with her name on it. And something in me, I don't know if it was desperation or some sick need for closure, pushed me to click play. The audio started with a burst of static, like an old cassette tape being rewound. Then I heard her voice. Jake. My heart stopped. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. I actually felt my chest tighten, like my body was trying to reject what I was hearing. It wasn't just someone who sounded like Jane. It was her. Every little inflection, the slight rasp she always got when she was tired. It was her voice. Jake, it's me. I froze. It felt like my whole body had gone numb. The voice kept going, but it was distorted, crackling in and out like a bad phone connection. I don't have much time. They're watching me. It's so cold here. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a lump rise in my throat, and my hand started shaking. I hadn't heard her voice in 10 years. I'd almost forgotten what it sounded like. But this wasn't a voicemail I recognized. They said you wouldn't find this. They said you wouldn't know. But I need you to listen, Jake. You can't trust them. I paused the audio and stared at the screen. My head was spinning. Trust who? None of this made sense. Jane was dead. This couldn't be real. And yet, deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was. I hit play again. They're lying to you. About me. About everything. I'm not gone, Jake. I'm not. The audio cut off abruptly, replaced by a low hum that made my teeth ache. I yanked my headphones off and slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding in my chest. What the hell had I just listened to? I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there on the couch, staring at the wall, replaying her voice in my head over and over. Every logical part of me was screaming that it was fake. It had to be fake, right? Maybe some sick prank, or one of those AI-generated voice things I'd heard about. But how would someone know about Jane? About me? I decided I needed answers. The next morning, I started digging. I went back to the forum, but when I tried to reload the thread, it was gone. The entire forum had been taken down, replaced with a message that said, "This site has been permanently removed for violating terms of service." That was my first red flag, but I wasn't about to give up that easily. I scoured every corner of the internet, from sketchy message boards to niche subreddits. I even tried posting on a few forums, asking if anyone had heard of the Elysium archive, but all I got were vague responses and spam links. Finally, I found something. It was a thread buried in an old conspiracy forum. The title was Elysium Archive and the Sound Experiments. Most of it was the kind of tinfoil hat stuff you'd expect. Government mind control, ghosts, aliens. But one comment stood out to me. It said, "The audio files are stolen. They're not supposed to exist." I sent a DM to the guy who posted it, hoping he'd give me more information. To my surprise, he replied almost immediately. His message was short and to the point. "Don't dig too deep. They'll find you." I asked him who they were, but he never responded. His account was deleted less than an hour later. By this point, I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and every time I closed my eyes, I heard Jane's voice, telling me it wasn't safe. I started noticing things, too. Small, subtle things that didn't feel right. One night, I saw a black SUV parked across the street from my house. It was idling with its headlights off, and when I stepped outside to get a better look, it drove away. Another time, I came home from the grocery store and found my front door unlocked, even though I was sure I'd locked it before leaving. The worst part, my laptop. A few days after I listened to that voicemail, I woke up to find my laptop on, even though I'd shut it down the night before. There was a single file open on the screen. It was a photo, pixelated and grainy, but I could just make out 2 figures. It was Jane and me. The photo was taken in our old kitchen, back when we lived in our first apartment together. I remembered that day. It was the first time we'd cooked dinner together, and she'd burned the pasta so badly, we ended up ordering pizza. But there was no way this photo could exist. We didn't take any pictures that night. Underneath the photo, there was a message. "Do you believe me now?" After seeing that photo, I didn't leave the house for 3 days. It wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, something primal, like I was being hunted. I'd sit in my living room, with the curtains drawn and all the lights off, staring at the corners of the room like they were alive. Every little noise made me jump. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, the wind against the windows. My heart would race at the slightest sound, convinced that whatever this was, it wasn't done with me yet. And I was right. The 4th night, after I found the photo, my phone rang at exactly 3:03 a.m. I didn't recognize the number, just a string of zeros, like something out of a bad horror movie. I should have let it go to voicemail. Hell, any sane person would have turned the phone off and tried to get some sleep. But I wasn't thinking straight. I'd barely slept in days, and my curiosity got the better of me. I answered. For a few seconds, there was nothing but static. Then, I heard it. "Jake." It was Jane's voice again, but this time, it sounded wrong. It was flat, monotone, like someone was mimicking her, but didn't quite know how to get it right. "Jake, it's so dark here." I didn't say anything. My throat felt like it was closing up, and my hand was shaking so badly I could barely keep the phone to my ear. "They said you wouldn't listen." The voice was distorted now, glitching in and out, like it was struggling to stay coherent. "You have to come find me, Jake. Before they do." There was a sharp crack, like a gunshot or a tree branch snapping, and the call went dead. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The call log said the call had lasted 2 minutes and 47 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next day, I decided I couldn't stay in the house any longer. I packed a bag with a few essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and booked a room at a cheap motel about 20 minutes away. It wasn't the kind of place you'd want to stay for long. The carpet was stained, the walls were thin, and the bathroom smelled like mildew, but at least it felt safe. Or so I thought. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my laptop, trying to make sense of everything. I dug deeper into forums, archives, anything I could find about the dark web and the Elysium archive. Most of what I found was just speculation, people claiming it was a government experiment, a secret database of paranormal evidence, or some kind of AI program gone rogue. One post caught my attention though. It was on an old paranormal forum, buried deep in a thread about unsolved internet mysteries. The user claimed that the Elysium archive wasn't just a website, it was a trap, a lure for people like me, curious people, desperate people. The post read, "They don't just find you, they break you." I stared at those words for what felt like hours. I kept thinking about the photo on my laptop, the phone call, Jane's voice. Was this what they meant by breaking me? Was I just another name on some twisted list? I was so caught up in my thoughts that I almost didn't hear it at first. The sound of footsteps outside my motel room door. At first, I told myself it was just another guest walking past, but the footsteps stopped right outside my door and didn't move. I froze, barely breathing, and listened. Tap, tap, tap. Someone was knocking on the door. It wasn't the kind of knock you'd expect from hotel staff, or a neighbor though. It was slow, deliberate, like whoever was on the other side was in no rush to be let in. I stayed perfectly still, hoping whoever it was would just go away. But then the knocking started again, this time louder, more forceful. "Jake," a voice whispered through the door. It wasn't Jane's voice this time. It was deeper, colder. It made my skin crawl. "Jake, open the door." I backed away from the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I grabbed the motel's landline and dialed the front desk, but the line was dead. The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was silence. I stood there, clutching the phone like a lifeline, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then I heard the doorknob rattle. Whoever was outside was trying to get in. I panicked and grabbed the chair from the desk, jamming it under the doorknob to keep it from opening. I backed into the corner of the room, clutching my phone and praying the door would hold. And then the whispering started. It was coming from the other side of the door. Low, guttural voices, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. The sound made my skin crawl, like nails on a chalkboard. It wasn't just one voice, either. It was dozens, maybe hundreds, all overlapping and echoing like some kind of demonic choir. I covered my ears and shut my eyes, but the whispering grew louder, more insistent. I thought I was going to lose my mind. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. When I opened my eyes, the room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioner. And when I finally worked up the courage to check the door, it was locked. No scratches, no dents, nothing to suggest someone had been trying to break in. But when I turned around, I saw it. There was a message scrawled on the motel mirror in what looked like blood. The letters were jagged, uneven, like they'd been scratched in with bare hands. "Stop looking." I didn't sleep that night. I don't even think I blinked. I just sat on the bed, staring at the mirror, waiting for something else to happen. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and drove aimlessly for hours, trying to figure out what to do next. I thought about going to the police, but what could I tell them? That I found a voicemail from my dead wife on the dark web, that someone, or something, was stalking me. They'd laughed me out of the station. By the time I got home, I felt like a shell of myself. My hands were shaking, my head was pounding, and I hadn't eaten in over 24 hours. I locked all the doors and windows, turned off my phone, and curled up on the couch, hoping that if I ignored everything, it would all just go away. But when I opened my laptop, there was a new file waiting for me on the desktop. It was a video file this time, labeled simply, Jane Last Moments.mp4. I stared at the file for what felt like hours, but it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. Jane Last Moments.mp4. My stomach churned at the sight of it. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to delete it, shut the laptop, and burn the damn thing if I had to. But I couldn't move. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I shouldn't open it. Nothing good could come from watching it. But there was this sick, morbid curiosity gnawing at me. A tiny voice whispering, "What if it's really her? What if you're missing your chance?" Before I could stop myself, I clicked it. The video started with static, the screen flickering like an old VHS tape. Then the image faded in, shaky and low quality, as if someone had filmed it on a cheap camcorder. It took me a second to process what I was looking at. It was a room, small, dimly lit, with concrete walls and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The air felt heavy, suffocating, even though I wasn't the one standing in that room. The camera shifted slightly, and that's when I saw her. Jane. She was sitting in a metal chair in the middle of the room, her wrists and ankles bound with thick ropes. Her head was slumped forward, her hair matted and covering her face. She was wearing the same scrubs she'd been wearing the night she died. I stopped breathing. My chest tightened, and my vision blurred with tears. It was her. It wasn't some look-alike or AI recreation. It was Jane. For a moment, she didn't move. Then her head slowly lifted, and she looked straight at the camera. "Jake," she whispered. Her voice was weak, trembling, but it was unmistakably hers. I leaned forward, my eyes glued to the screen, every nerve in my body on edge. "Jake, I don't know where I am." Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her face. I could see bruises on her arms, cuts on her wrists where the ropes had dug into her skin. They said, "I'm not real." They said I died, but I didn't. I'm still here, Jake. I'm still here. I felt like I was going to throw up. My head was spinning, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the laptop steady. "Please," she sobbed. "You have to help me. They're coming back. I don't know what they want, but they..." Her voice cut off as the door behind her opened. The camera shifted slightly, as if whoever was holding it had turned to look at the door. A man walked in, his face obscured by shadows. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, and his movements were deliberate, almost mechanical. He walked over to Jane, and for a moment, he just stood there, staring at her. "Please," she begged. "Please don't hurt me." The man didn't say a word. He reached into his coat and pulled out something long and thin. It took me a second to realize it was a knife. "No," I whispered, my voice cracking. "No, no, no." The man grabbed her by the hair, yanking her head back. She screamed, thrashing against the ropes, but it was no use. He pressed the knife to her throat, and for a moment, the room was completely silent. I wanted to look away. I wanted to close the laptop and pretend none of this was happening, but I couldn't. I was frozen, paralyzed by the horror unfolding in front of me. The man leaned in close, whispering something in her ear that I couldn't hear. Then he looked straight at the camera, and for the first time, I saw his face. It was me. My heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The man in the video, the one holding the knife to Jane's throat, had my face. Every detail was identical, down to the scar on my chin from when I fell off my bike as a kid. But his eyes were wrong. They were empty, cold, like there was nothing human behind them. I screamed at the screen, at myself, at whatever this thing was. Leave her alone. Stop it. Please. But it didn't stop. The man pressed the knife into her skin, drawing a thin line of blood. Jane's screams echoed through the room, raw and desperate. And then, the screen cut to black. I sat there in stunned silence, my chest heaving, tears streaming down my face. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. It couldn't have been real. Jane was dead. I'd buried her. I'd seen the casket lowered into the ground. But that video, it wasn't just some sick prank. It felt real. Too real. And that man, the one with my face, what the hell was he? Before I could process any of it, my laptop screen flickered back to life. The video was gone, replaced by a new message in bold red text. This is your only warning. Stop digging, or you'll join her. I slammed the laptop shut and threw it across the room. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might explode. I stumbled to my feet, pacing back and forth, trying to calm down, but my mind was spiraling. Who were they? How did they know about Jane? About me? And most importantly, was she still alive? I couldn't shake the image of her face in that video, the desperation in her voice. If there was even the slightest chance she was alive, I had to do something, but I didn't know where to start. Then I remembered the forum, the Elysium archive. Maybe there was something I missed, some kind of clue. I grabbed my laptop, ignoring the warning on the screen, and tried to log back into the dark web. But every link I tried led to a dead end. It was like the entire site had been wiped from existence. Over the next few days, things got worse. I started noticing more black SUVs parked on my street, always idling, always watching. My phone would ring at odd hours, but when I answered, all I'd hear was static, or worse, Jane's distorted voice, begging me to find her. One night, I woke up to find my bedroom window wide open, even though I knew I'd locked it before going to bed. There was a single footprint on the carpet, muddy, bare, and far too large to be mine. Whoever or whatever was behind this, they weren't just trying to scare me. They were sending a message, and I was starting to understand exactly what they meant. I don't know what possessed me to keep going. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe I was just desperate to believe there was still a chance, however small, to save her. But I should have stopped. I should have taken the warning on my laptop seriously. I spent the next 2 days in a paranoid haze. My world had become a waking nightmare, one where shadows moved when they shouldn't, where my own reflection in the mirror felt like it was watching me. The SUV across the street wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. It was parked right in front of my house now, its engine off, its windows tinted black. I couldn't see inside, but I could feel their eyes on me. And every night, like clockwork, my phone would ring, always at 3:03 a.m., always from the same string of zeros. I stopped answering, but the silence was almost worse. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept, and I was starting to feel like I was losing my grip on reality. The air in my house felt heavy, oppressive, like I was being suffocated by an invisible presence. I felt them everywhere, watching, waiting, pressing in closer with every passing second. And then, At exactly 3:03 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, I answered. I didn't say anything. I just held the phone to my ear, my hand shaking, waiting for the static, or the voice, or whatever fresh hell they had planned for me. But what I heard instead made my blood run cold. It was breathing, slow, deliberate, shallow breaths, like someone was standing just on the other side of the line, listening. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat was dry, and my entire body felt like it was locked in place. Then, finally, the voice came. But it wasn't Jane's this time. It was mine. "Jake," it whispered. "You're too late." I dropped the phone and stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest. The call cut off, but the sound of my own voice lingered in my mind, replaying over and over like a broken record. "You're too late." I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the phone, my mind racing with every terrible possibility. But then I heard it. A knock at the door. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft, deliberate taps, like whoever or whatever was on the other side already knew I wouldn't be able to resist. I sat frozen on the couch, my body screaming at me not to move, but my legs betrayed me. I stood up and walked toward the door. The closer I got, the colder the air became. My breath fogged in front of me, and my hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I don't know what I expected to see when I opened it, but when I finally turned the knob and pulled the door open, my heart stopped. There was no one there. The street outside was empty. No SUVs, no strange figures, nothing. Just the quiet hum of the streetlights and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. But when I looked down, I saw it. A package. It was small, wrapped in plain brown paper, with no address or return label. Just my name, scrawled across the top in shaky, uneven handwriting. I brought it inside, my hand shaking as I set it on the kitchen table. For a long time, I just stared at it, trying to decide if I even wanted to know what was inside. But eventually, my curiosity got the better of me. I tore off the paper and opened the box. Inside was a flash drive. Nothing else. I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting my screen to fill with red text or some other terrifying message. But all it contained was a single video file. It was labeled goodbye.mp4. The video was short, only a few seconds long. It started with Jane, sitting in the same chair from the previous video, her wrists and ankles still bound. But this time, she wasn't crying. She wasn't struggling. She just sat there, staring at the camera, her eyes hollow and lifeless. And then she smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile I remembered from when she was alive. The warm, genuine smile that lit up her whole face. This was something else. Something wrong. Her lips curled upward in a way that felt unnatural. Her teeth bared in a grotesque grin that sent chills down my spine. "Goodbye, Jake," she said, her voice cold and empty. And then the screen went black. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, waiting for something else to happen. But the video didn't restart. There was no message, no explanation, nothing. Just the darkness staring back at me. And then I heard it. The knock. But this time, it wasn't at the front door. It was coming from inside the house. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a kitchen knife, and crept through the house, my heart racing. The sound was coming from upstairs, from the bedroom. 3 soft, deliberate knocks, echoing through the silence. When I reached the door, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the doorknob, and for a moment, I thought about running. But where would I go? Whoever, or whatever, was doing this had already proven They could reach me no matter where I was. I opened the door. The room was empty. The bed was unmade. The curtains were drawn, and the air was so cold I could see my breath. But there was no one there. At least, that's what I thought. And then I saw it. Scrawled across the wall in thick, dripping letters that looked like they'd been scratched into the paint with bare hands were the words, "She's with us now." I don't remember much after that. I think I screamed. I think I ran. But everything after that moment is a blur. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, the calls have stopped. The black SUV is gone. The knocks in the night have ceased. But I don't feel safe. Not even close. Because every time I close my eyes, I see her, Jane, sitting in that chair, smiling that awful, unnatural smile. And every night, without fail, I wake up at 3:03 a.m. The first time it happened, I thought it was just my body playing tricks on me. But last night, when I woke up, I heard something. A voice. Her voice. "Jake," she whispered. "I'm waiting for you. I don't know how much longer I can take this. Whatever they are, whoever they are, they won't stop until they break me. Maybe they already have. But there's one thing I know for sure. Jane's not coming back, and neither am I." I ordered an animal from the dark web. Help me. This man is pretending to be my dog. You know that feeling when you're scrolling on your phone at 2 a.m. and you suddenly realize you're way too deep into the weird side of the internet? Like, 1 second you're watching harmless TikToks about cats knocking over wine glasses, and the next you're reading conspiracy theories about shadow governments or watching some guy review a cursed eBay doll. Yeah, that's where this all started. Except I didn't stop scrolling. I wish I had. To be honest, my life wasn't exactly in the best place at the time. My girlfriend of 4 years had just dumped me for some guy who owns a protein shake company. My job as a graphic designer was on the verge of tanking because I hadn't submitted a single project in weeks. I wasn't even going outside anymore. The highlight of my day was checking my DoorDash app to see if the delivery guy was getting closer. That night, though, I was bored, lonely, and stupid. I can't even remember what I was originally looking for online. All I know is I ended up on some sketchy subreddit where people were posting about their deep web experiences. Most of it sounded fake. Stuff like, "I bought a ghost off the dark web and now my kitchen is haunted." Or, "I found a site that sells cursed Ouija boards." But there was one post that stuck with me. The title was simple: "Exotic pets you won't find anywhere else." The OP claimed to have ordered a custom companion from a website so secret that even the deep web users barely talked about it. It wasn't your usual dark web horror story. There were no scary photos or mentions of animal abuse. In fact, OP was weirdly enthusiastic. He said the animals were engineered to be smarter than regular pets, completely loyal, and unlike anything you'd ever find at a shelter. His last sentence was burned into my brain. It's like they're not even animals. They're more than that. Normally, I would have just closed the tab and moved on. But then I saw someone in the comments had posted a link. Don't ask me why I clicked it. Maybe it was the boredom, or maybe I just wanted to distract myself from how miserable I was feeling. But I clicked. The site looked like something straight out of 2003. Basic HTML layout, a white background, and a pixelated paw print as the logo. There wasn't much to it, just a single page with a scrolling banner that read, "Find your perfect companion today." There were a few listings with grainy photos. Exotic-looking animals that couldn't possibly be real. A leopard with green fur, a bird with 3 tails. But at the bottom of the page was a section labeled Custom Orders. That's when I saw it. The photo was simple. A black and white husky with electric blue eyes staring straight into the camera. The caption read, "Your perfect dog, 100% loyalty, tailored to your needs." The price was $3,000. I should have laughed. I should have closed the tab and gone to bed. But instead, I clicked the Order Now button. The next page was even creepier. It asked me to fill out a questionnaire about what I wanted in a dog. Not just stuff like size or breed. It wanted personality traits. Friendly or protective. Playful or calm. There was even a box for custom requests. I don't know what possessed me to type what I did. It felt stupid at the time, but I was curious. Make him as smart as possible. Like human level smart. I figured they'd either ignore the request or send me a regular dog. What kind of website even does this? But when I hit submit, I got an immediate confirmation email. It didn't look like any email I'd seen before. Just a string of random letters and numbers as the sender, and the subject line, "Thank you for your order." It had no tracking information, no estimated delivery date, nothing. Just one line at the bottom. Your companion will arrive within 7 days. At this point, I was convinced I'd just thrown $3,000 into the void. I told myself I didn't care. I had nothing else to spend the money on anyway. But by the 4th day, I was starting to feel like an idiot. No updates, no contact. Just that creepy email sitting in my inbox, taunting me. Then, on the 7th day, I woke up to a notification on my phone. It was a text message from an unknown number. No words, no explanation, just a photo. The crate was sitting on my front porch. I didn't even remember ordering anything heavy, so for a second, I thought it was some kind of prank. But when I opened my front door, there it was. A wooden crate about the size of a dishwasher, bolted shut with iron hinges. It looked old, like something you'd see in a museum, the kind of thing you'd expect to hold ancient relics. There was no label, no shipping info, just a single sticker slapped onto the top with the word "Live" printed in bold red letters. My hands were shaking as I dragged the crate inside. I didn't know why. I mean, it's not like I was expecting a human body to be inside or anything, but something about it felt wrong. Like the air around it was heavier. I used a screwdriver to pry open the lid. Straw and packing foam spilled out everywhere, and for a second, I didn't see anything. But then I heard it, the sound of breathing. When I pulled back the last layer of straw, my heart stopped. It was the husky from the photo. Black and white fur, electric blue eyes, and a sleek, muscular build. He looked perfect. Almost too perfect. His coat was glossy, his teeth perfectly white, his eyes so bright they almost glowed. I reached out a hand, half expecting him to bite me, but instead, he sniffed my fingers and gave them a gentle lick. It felt weirdly warm, like human skin. I should have been happy. I mean, this is what I ordered, right? But as I stared into those impossibly blue eyes, I felt something I couldn't quite explain. He wasn't wagging his tail. I decided to name him Ghost. Yeah, I know, cliché, but it felt fitting. At first, everything seemed fine. He was quiet, well-behaved, and incredibly smart. Too smart. I taught him basic commands like sit and stay, and he picked them up immediately. But then I started noticing the way he'd watch me. Not like a dog watches its owner, but like something else. One night, I caught him staring at me from the doorway while I was brushing my teeth. His head was tilted, his eyes unblinking. I waved at him, half joking, and said, "What's up, buddy?" And I swear to God, he nodded. It wasn't like a dog tilting its head. It was deliberate, controlled, like he understood me. That's when the scratching started. I've owned dogs before. They scratch. It's normal. At least, that's what I told myself the first night it happened. But this wasn't the kind of scratching you hear when your dog wants to go out or when their paw gets itchy. No, this was different. The first time I heard it, it was around 2:30 a.m. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard this faint, rhythmic scratching. Not at the door, not at the walls, but underneath the bed. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Ghost was in the corner of the room, curled up on his dog bed, perfectly still. I could see his outline in the faint glow of my phone charger. I figured maybe I had a mouse or something, so I leaned over the edge of the bed and peeked underneath. Nothing. Just a couple of dust bunnies and an old sock I'd lost months ago. But as soon as I laid back down, it started again. Scritch, scritch, scritch. This time, it was louder, closer. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest, and looked over at Ghost. He wasn't asleep anymore. He was sitting upright, staring at me with those freakishly bright blue eyes. He didn't make a sound, no growl, no whine. He just stared. "Ghost," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my own breathing. He tilted his head. The scratching stopped. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Sleep deprivation does weird things to your brain, right? Maybe the sound was just a tree branch brushing against the window, or the house settling, or something. But when I woke up the next morning, there were scratches on the hardwood floor, long, jagged marks that ran from the foot of my bed to the door. I wanted to believe Ghost had done it while I was sleeping. I really did. But the thing is, the scratches didn't look like claw marks. They looked like they'd been made with a knife. By the third night, things had escalated. I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, trying to distract myself with stupid memes and YouTube videos. Ghost was in his usual spot in the corner of the room, sitting unnervingly still, like one of those taxidermy animals you see in museums. That's when I heard it again. Scritch, scritch, scritch. This time, it wasn't coming from under the bed. It was coming from the closet. Now, let me explain something about my closet. It's one of those old, sliding door types that's always been a little janky. One of the doors doesn't close all the way, so there's always a tiny sliver of darkness visible, even when it's shut. I've never been scared of it before, but in that moment, I felt like a little kid again, terrified of the monster hiding in the dark. "Ghost," I whispered, hoping he'd do something. Bark, growl, anything. But when I glanced at him, he was already looking at the closet. His ears were perked up, his head tilted, and his tail was completely still. I don't know what possessed me to get out of bed, but I did. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked toward the closet. The scratching stopped as soon as I moved. The silence was deafening. I slid the door open. Nothing. Just my clothes, some old shoes, and a box of junk I'd been meaning to donate. But when I turned around, Ghost was standing right behind me. I nearly dropped my phone. He was so close, I could feel his breath on my leg. I hadn't even heard him move. "Jesus, Ghost," I muttered, my voice shaky. You scared the shit out of me." He didn't respond. Of course, he didn't. He's a dog. But the way he was looking at me, it wasn't normal. His eyes weren't just blue anymore. They were glowing, literally glowing, like someone had shoved LED lights behind his pupils. I backed away, suddenly feeling like I'd made a huge mistake. But before I could say anything else, Ghost turned and walked out of the room. Not ran, not trotted, walked. Like a person. The next day, I decided to test something. I left my laptop open on the kitchen table while I went to take a shower. When I came back, Ghost was sitting in the chair, staring at the screen. At first, I thought it was just a fluke. Dogs get curious, right? When I looked closer, I realized he wasn't just staring at the screen. He was scrolling. His paw was resting on the trackpad, and the web page was moving, slowly but deliberately. I froze. "Ghost?" He stopped, turned to look at me, and tilted his head. Then he hopped off the chair and walked out of the room like nothing had happened. I ran over to the laptop, half expecting to find some random web page open, but no. He'd been scrolling through my emails. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I don't know why I thought that would help. Ghost had already figured out how to open the fridge, how to turn on the TV, and apparently how to use a laptop. A door wasn't going to stop him, but it made me feel better. At least until around 1 a.m., when I heard the doorknob jiggle. It was subtle at first, like someone testing to see if it was locked. Then it got more aggressive. Click, 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 click. I sat up in bed, my heart racing, and grabbed my phone. The sound stopped for a moment, and I thought maybe he'd given up. But then, slowly, the scratching started. This time, it wasn't under the bed. It wasn't in the closet. It was at the door. I don't know how to describe it, but it didn't sound like paws. It sounded like nails, long, sharp nails, scraping against the wood. "Ghost?" I called out, my voice trembling. The scratching stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the other side of the door, I heard a voice. "Let me in." It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was calm, measured, and disturbingly human. "Let me in," the voice repeated, this time softer. I didn't move. I couldn't. My entire body was frozen, my mind racing to rationalize what I was hearing. Dogs can't talk. That's impossible. But the voice wasn't coming from some stranger. It was coming from Ghost. "Let me in," he said again. I backed up against the headboard, clutching my phone like it was some kind of weapon. The doorknob jiggled again. Then it stopped. And I swear to God, I heard him laugh. Not a bark, not a growl, a laugh. It was quiet at first, almost like a chuckle, but it grew louder and deeper until it sounded like something straight out of a nightmare. It wasn't just coming from the door anymore. It was everywhere, surrounding me. I don't remember much after that. I think I blacked out. When I woke up, it was morning. The door was still locked. Ghost was sitting at the foot of my bed, staring at me with those unnaturally bright eyes. His tail wagged once, slow and deliberate. That's when I noticed the scratches on the inside of the door. They weren't claw marks. They were letters. "Let me in." I didn't call anyone. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, I think my dog is talking to me," and scratched words into my bedroom door in the middle of the night. Yeah, that would go over well. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, staring at the scratches. They were deep, jagged, and perfectly spaced, like someone had taken their time carving the letters into the wood with a knife. Ghost didn't leave my side. He sat there, perfectly still, his head slightly tilted like he was studying me, watching my reaction. I needed to get out of the apartment, to clear my head, but the thought of leaving him alone, or worse, leaving myself alone with him, was unbearable. So I did what any reasonable person would do in a situation like this. I turned to the internet. I started Googling everything I could think of. Dog acting weird, dog staring at me, dog making human sounds. Most of the results were normal. Articles about separation anxiety, or forums where people complained about their pets' strange quirks. But then I stumbled across something that made my stomach drop. It was an old, archived post on some obscure forum called strangecompanions.net. The title read, "Beware custom pets, they're not what you think." The user claimed they'd ordered a dog off the dark web, just like I had. At first, it had seemed normal, too normal even, but over time, it started doing things that no animal should be able to do. The post described almost exactly what I was experiencing: the staring, the intelligence, the sense that the dog was more than just a dog. But the part that really got to me: the user claimed they'd woken up one night to find the dog standing over them, whispering their name. The post ended abruptly, mid-sentence, with no follow-up comments or replies. I clicked on the user's profile to see if they'd posted anything else, but their account had been deleted. I spent the rest of the day glued to my laptop, digging deeper into the forum. There were other posts, scattered and inconsistent, but all telling similar stories. People ordering custom pets that were too smart, too lifelike, too wrong. Most of the posts were vague, like the users were too scared to give details, but one post stood out. The user claimed that these animals weren't animals at all. They were experiments, part animal, part something else. The post was long and rambling, full of conspiracy theories about government labs, rogue scientists, and illegal genetic engineering. At first, it seemed ridiculous, but the more I read, the more it started to click. The husky's piercing blue eyes, his unnatural intelligence, the way he moved, how silent and deliberate it was, how he always seemed to know exactly what I was thinking. I thought about the words scratched into the door. "Let me in." He wasn't asking to come into my room. He was asking to come into my head. That night, I locked every door and window in the apartment. I even slid the couch in front of the bedroom door, just in case. Ghost didn't seem to care. He sat in the living room, perfectly calm, watching me as I moved around the apartment. At one point, I caught him staring at my laptop again. I'd left it open on the kitchen table, and he was sitting in the chair, his paw hovering over the keyboard. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't move, didn't even blink. Slowly, I walked over and closed the laptop. As I did, I noticed something strange on the screen. It wasn't an open web page or a document. It was the login screen for my bank account. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was being watched. I could hear him pacing outside the door, his nails clicking against the hardwood floor. Sometimes he'd stop, and I'd hear that low, guttural chuckle again, muffled but unmistakable. Around 3 a.m., I heard something new. Knocking, not on the front door, on the bedroom door. It was soft at first, almost polite. Knock, knock. Then it got louder. Bang, bang, bang. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hit the buttons. But when I brought the phone to my ear, there was no ringing, no operator, just static. And underneath the static, I could hear him laughing. "Let me in," he said, his voice distorted, like it was coming through a broken speaker. I dropped the phone. The knocking stopped. For a long moment, there was silence. Then I heard it, the sound of the couch scraping across the floor. He was moving it. "Ghost?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The couch slid again, and the door creaked open just an inch. I froze, too terrified to move. My heart was pounding so loudly, I thought it might burst. Then, slowly, the door opened all the way. Ghost stood in the doorway, his glowing blue eyes locked onto mine. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, there was a man. At least, I think it was a man. His skin was pale and stretched too tightly over his bones, like he hadn't eaten in weeks. His eyes were sunken, his lips cracked and peeling. But the worst part, he was wearing Ghost's fur. It was draped over him like a coat, the head resting on top of his own like a grotesque hood. He stepped into the room, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. Ghost followed behind him, his tail wagging slowly, deliberately, like he was proud of what he'd done. I backed up against the wall, my mind racing. "What? What do you want?" I stammered. The man smiled, revealing rows of jagged yellow teeth. "Let me in," he whispered. Before I could respond, he lunged at me. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up on the floor, my head pounding and my vision blurry. The room was empty. The door was wide open, the couch shoved to the side. Ghost was gone. So was the man. But on the wall, scratched deep into the plaster, were the words, "He's already in." It's been 3 days since then. I haven't seen Ghost, or whatever he is, since that night, but I know he's still out there. I can feel him watching me. Sometimes I hear scratching at the windows, even though I'm on the 3rd floor. My phone doesn't work anymore. Every time I try to call someone, all I hear is static, and that horrible, distorted laugh. I don't know how much time I have left. If you're reading this, please, do not order anything from the dark web, and if you ever hear scratching at your door in the middle of the night, don't let him in. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days after that night. I couldn't. Every noise, every flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye sent me into a full-blown panic. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, the air thick with something I can only describe as wrong. But the worst part, I knew Ghost wasn't gone. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see those glowing blue pupils staring back at me, unblinking. And that man, if you can even call him a man, his cracked lips curling into that twisted smile, he's already in. Those words kept echoing in my head, over and over, until I thought I'd lose my mind. On the 3rd day, I decided I couldn't sit there, waiting for him to come back. I had to do something, anything. I needed answers. I started tearing through my apartment, looking for clues, something I'd missed, something that might tell me what the hell Ghost really was. I combed through every drawer, every cabinet, every crevice of my increasingly claustrophobic space. That's when I remembered the crate. I'd left it out on the balcony after Ghost arrived, figuring I'd toss it later. When I went to check, it was still there, wedged into the corner and covered in a thin layer of dirt from the wind. For the first time in days, I felt something close to hope. Maybe there was something inside, some paperwork, an explanation, anything. I grabbed a crowbar from under the sink and pried the crate open again. Straw and packing foam spilled out onto the floor, but this time I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A folded piece of paper, tucked into a hidden compartment at the bottom of the crate. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. The letter was short, typed out in an eerie, clinical font. Congratulations on your purchase. Your custom companion has been designed to your exact specifications. Please note that your order is final. No refunds, no returns. Warning: failure to adhere to proper handling guidelines may result in unexpected consequences. For your safety, do not leave your companion unattended for extended periods of time, and never attempt to look for the handler. Enjoy your new best friend. Exotic companions. Team. I read it twice, then a third time, trying to make sense of it. The handler? What the hell did that mean? And what proper handling guidelines were they talking about? No one had sent me any instructions. At the bottom of the page, there was a line of text in bold red letters. If your companion begins behaving erratically, do not engage. Seek professional assistance immediately. There was no number, no website, no email, just that ominous warning staring back at me like a sick joke. That night, the scratching came back. Not at the door this time, not at the windows. It was coming from inside the walls. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The sound was faint, almost like skittering, like rats or cockroaches scuttling through the insulation. But the longer I listened, the more I realized it wasn't random. It was deliberate. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It stopped for a moment, and I held my breath, praying that it was over. Then, from the corner of the room, I heard something that made my skin crawl. "Let me in." The voice was muffled, warped by the layers of drywall and plaster, but I knew it was him. Ghost, or whatever Ghost had become. I grabbed the crowbar I'd left on the kitchen counter and slammed it against the wall, desperate to make it stop. "Leave me alone," I shouted, my voice cracking. The scratching stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the other side of the wall, I heard a low, guttural laugh. It wasn't Ghost this time. It was the man. That was the breaking point. I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. I threw on a jacket, grabbed my car keys, and bolted out the door, not caring that I hadn't showered or eaten in days. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to get as far away from that place as possible. But when I got to the parking lot, my car wasn't there. It didn't make any sense. I'd parked it in my usual spot, right next to the lamppost, but now there was nothing but an empty patch of asphalt. My stomach dropped as I noticed something scrawled on the ground in white chalk. "You can't run." I stumbled back, my hands trembling, and that's when I heard it, the sound of claws clicking against pavement. I turned around, and there he was, Ghost, standing at the edge of the lot, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the streetlights. His fur was matted and streaked with something dark, something that looked a lot like blood. Behind him, the man was crouched on all fours, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. His skin looked even worse in the light, gray and cracked like a rotting corpse. For a moment, none of us moved. Then the man grinned, his jagged teeth glinting in the light. "Going somewhere," he rasped. I don't remember making the conscious decision to run, but suddenly my legs were moving, carrying me down the street as fast as they could. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear them behind me, the clicking of claws, the ragged sound of the man's breathing, his wet, guttural laughter. I cut through alleys, vaulted over fences, and ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they might give out. Eventually, I stumbled into the parking lot of a 24-hour McDonald's. The fluorescent lights felt harsh and sterile after the darkness, but I didn't care. I burst through the door, gasping for air, and collapsed onto one of the plastic chairs. The employees gave me weird looks, but no one said anything. I must have looked like a lunatic, sweaty, disheveled, and clutching a crowbar, like my life depended on it. I sat there for what felt like hours, my eyes darting to the windows every few seconds, waiting for Ghost or the man to show up. But they never did. I thought I was safe. But as I was leaving the McDonald's, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the hood of a parked car, written in the same white chalk, were 2 words, "Still hunting." I don't know how they found me. I don't know why they're doing this. All I know is that it's not over. When I got back to my apartment, and yeah, I know how stupid that was, the crate was waiting for me. It was sitting in the middle of the living room, the lid slightly ajar. I didn't put it there. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. "You open the door. Now he's in." The scratches on the walls are getting worse. I can hear them, even now, as I write this. He's in the apartment, crawling through the spaces I can't reach, watching me from the shadows. I haven't slept in days. I don't think I'll make it through the night. If you're reading this, please, don't trust anything that seems too good to be true. And for the love of God, if you ever see a pair of glowing blue eyes staring back at you from the darkness, run. The crate was gone. When I woke up this morning, if you can even call it waking up, after barely 2 hours of restless, panic-stricken dozing, it wasn't in the middle of the living room anymore. At first, I thought maybe I'd hallucinated it. Sleep deprivation will do that to you. But when I glanced at the corner of the room, I saw the marks it left on the floor. Deep, splintered gouges, as if someone had dragged it away. The walls were worse now, too. The scratches weren't random anymore. They weren't just desperate lines clawed into the plaster. They were shapes, symbols. Some of them looked like runes, like something you'd see in a book about ancient rituals. Others were more human. Faces, crudely scratched, but horrifyingly clear. Mouths wide open in screams. Eyeless sockets staring at me from every wall. And then there were the words. They covered almost every surface, carved so deeply into the walls that chunks of plaster had started to fall away. He's in. You can't hide. Open the door. I didn't need to ask which door. Around noon, the knocking started. It wasn't like before. This time, it was constant, relentless. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed through the apartment, shaking the walls, rattling the windows. It wasn't coming from the front door or the bedroom door. It was coming from the closet. That same damn closet where this whole nightmare began. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The pounding was inside my head now, vibrating through my skull. It felt like my brain was being squeezed, like something was trying to crawl into my thoughts and take over. "Let me in," the voice whispered. Except this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was dozens, hundreds, men, women, children, all speaking in perfect unison. "Let me in." I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but my body wouldn't move. I felt paralyzed, frozen to the spot, as the closet door slowly creaked open. It wasn't Ghost who stepped out. It wasn't the man, either. It was both of them, twisted together, fused into something grotesque and impossible. Ghost's fur was stretched across the man's gaunt frame, like a second skin, his blue eyes glowing from hollow sockets. The man's lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't his. It was Ghost's. "You open the door," he said, his tone calm and casual. as if we were old friends catching up over coffee. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. What? What are you? I managed to choke out. He tilted his head, mimicking the same gesture Ghost had made so many times before. I'm what you wanted, he said simply. Your perfect companion. Loyal, smart, made to order. No, I whispered, shaking my head. You're not. Oh, but I am, he interrupted, his grin widening. You wanted human smart, didn't you? You wanted more than a dog. He took a step closer, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a marionette being yanked along by invisible strings. You didn't read the fine print, did you? I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say anything, he lunged. I don't remember much after that. I think I blacked out again, or maybe I just disconnected. All I know is that when I came to, I was lying on the floor, and the apartment was dead silent. The scratches were gone. The symbols, the faces, the words, everything. The walls were pristine, as if nothing had ever happened, but the closet door was still open, and there was something inside. It wasn't Ghost, at least not entirely. He was sitting there, staring at me with those same electric blue eyes, but his body was wrong. His limbs were too long, his fur matted and patchy. His mouth didn't move when he spoke, but I heard him anyway, his voice echoing inside my head like a thought I couldn't control. You let me in, he said. I scrambled backward, my heart pounding. Get out, I gasped. Just leave me alone. He tilted his head, that same unnervingly human gesture, and smiled. Why would I leave? He asked. I'm home. The days blurred together after that. I stopped going outside. I stopped eating. My phone stopped working entirely. No calls, no texts, no internet. Every time I tried to leave the apartment, I'd find myself back inside without any memory of how I got there. Ghost never left the closet. He just sat there, watching me, whispering things I couldn't understand. At night, I'd hear him pacing through the walls, his claws clicking against the wood, his voice growing louder and louder until I thought my skull might split open. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of the man, the handler, or whatever he was, lurking in the shadows. He never spoke, never moved, but his presence was suffocating. The worst part, though, was the mirror. It started a week ago. Every time I looked in the mirror, my reflection would smile. Not a normal smile, a knowing smile. It didn't matter what I was doing, brushing my teeth, washing my hands, whatever. My reflection would tilt its head, just like Ghost, and grin at me like it knew something I didn't. And then, 2 days ago, it spoke. You let him in, it said, its voice low and distorted, like it was coming from a broken speaker. I smashed the mirror after that, but it didn't help. Now, every shiny surface, windows, appliances, even the screen of my laptop, shows the same thing. My reflection, smiling. I think I understand now. He's not trying to kill me. That would be too easy. He wants to take me, to replace me. And once he does, he'll leave. He'll find someone else. Someone who's lonely. Someone who's desperate. Someone stupid enough to think they can order a perfect companion off the dark web. I don't know how much time I have left. The scratches are back, worse than ever. They're on the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Every surface covered in those same jagged letters. Let me in. And now, when I close my eyes, I can feel him, crawling inside my head, clawing at my thoughts, whispering in my own voice. I don't know if anyone will ever read this. Maybe I'm already gone. Maybe he's already in. If you're out there, if you're reading this, please, Don't make the same mistake I did. He's not a dog. He's not a companion. He's a door. And once you open it, you can never close it again. I got punishment on a dark web thread with 1000 IQ. I can finally see into other universes. Alright, I know how this is going to sound. You're either going to think I'm insane, a liar, or some dude looking for internet clout. But I swear, what I'm about to tell you really happened. And if you're one of those people who thinks they're brave enough to explore the dark web, let this be your warning. It's not like in the movies where hackers just find stolen credit cards or illegal marketplaces. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. Some things you find there, they find you back. It all started on a Friday night. Yeah, I know, super cliche, but that's when my life was still normal. I was sitting in my tiny apartment in Austin, eating cold McNuggets from lunch and scrolling through TikTok like usual. There was this whole trend about dark web experiences, and everyone seemed to have a story about how they found some creepy website that ruined their lives. I thought it was fake. I mean, let's be real, it's TikTok. Half those videos are just some dude with an overactive imagination trying to go viral. But I was curious. I've always been that guy, the one who pushes the limits, the one who says, what's the worst that could happen? I'm also a little too into conspiracy theories, if I'm being honest. Like the whole Mandela effect thing. I've spent hours going down rabbit holes about it. So yeah, when I heard people were finding stuff on the dark web about alternate dimensions and parallel universes, I couldn't resist. I downloaded Tor that same night. For anyone who doesn't know, Tor is basically the browser people use to access the dark web. It's not illegal or anything, but what you do with it can be. After some Googling and digging through Reddit threads, I found a guide on how to stay safe while browsing. Spoiler, no one is ever really safe on the dark web. At first, I didn't find anything interesting, just some sketchy forums, black market stuff, and hitman for hire pages that were obviously scams. But after hours of clicking around, I stumbled across this thread. It didn't have a flashy title like Portal to Another Dimension or anything dumb like that. It was just called The Game. The post itself was short, just a single sentence. If you think you're smarter than the universe, prove it. Underneath that was a link. No context, no comments, nothing. My gut told me to close the browser and go back to watching YouTube. But my curiosity won. I clicked. The link took me to a plain black website with a single question in white text. What is your biggest regret? I thought it was a joke. Some edgy hacker trying to mess with people. But something about the question, it got under my skin. I sat there staring at it for way too long. Like, was this site reading me? Did it know something I didn't? Eventually, I typed something simple. Not finishing college. Lame, I know, but I didn't want to get too personal. As soon as I hit enter, the screen changed. It said, regret acknowledged. Consequences loading. My heart dropped. It was probably just a prank, but the way the site worded it gave me chills. I was about to close the tab when my laptop froze. The screen went black, and for a second, I thought I'd bricked my computer. But then, something popped up. It was a video. At first, it looked like security footage from a gas station or something. The timestamp in the corner said it was live. I squinted at the screen, trying to make out what was happening. There was a guy standing at the counter, wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled up. He was holding something in his hand, something that looked like a knife. I froze. This wasn't fake. This wasn't some creepypasta someone made for fun. I was watching a live crime. The guy at the counter suddenly turned and looked directly at the camera. No, not at the camera. At me. I swear, I could feel him staring through the screen. My entire body tensed up. Then, he raised his hand, the one holding the knife, and pointed it forward. Before I could process what was happening, a message appeared on the screen. Welcome to the game. You are now a participant. Your actions will determine your outcome. Good luck. The video disappeared, and my laptop shut off completely. I didn't sleep that night. Honestly, I thought it was just a really elaborate prank. Maybe the site hacked into my webcam or something and was messing with me. That didn't explain the live video, but my brain wasn't in the mood to think logically. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing like crazy. I had a bunch of texts from my best friend Ryan. Dude, are you okay? Check the news. Like now. Call me. This is serious. Still groggy, I opened Twitter to see what he was talking about. And that's when I saw it. There was a trending hashtag, gas station murder. I clicked it, and the first video that popped up made my stomach drop. It was a news report about a robbery turned homicide at a gas station just a few miles from my apartment. The footage they showed was grainy, but it was the same video I'd seen on my laptop. The guy in the hoodie, the knife, everything. The timestamp matched the exact moment I was on that dark web thread. I'm gonna stop here for now, because this is already long, and I don't want to overwhelm you guys. But trust me, this was just the beginning. Things got a lot worse. Like, way worse. If you're still reading, let me know if you want me to keep going. I honestly don't know what to do with all this, but if you're thinking about going on the dark web, please, don't. You don't want to end up in the game. Edit 1. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up. I see all your comments, and I'll post the next part soon. I just need a bit of time to get my thoughts together. Also, for everyone asking, I haven't told the cops yet. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Hey, I saw a murder on my laptop before it happened. They'd think I was insane. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days after I saw that news report. You ever feel like the universe is watching you? Like every little sound outside your window, every shadow in the corner of your room, is something waiting to pounce. That's how I felt. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat on my couch with the curtains drawn, flipping through every news channel and scrolling obsessively on my phone. No matter how much I refreshed Twitter, the same headlines were staring back at me. Gas station robbery turns fatal. Unidentified suspect still at large. Footage released of Austin homicide. It was real. That video I'd seen, live, on my laptop, wasn't some twisted prank or pre-recorded footage. It actually happened. Someone was dead, and somehow I'd been dragged into it. But here's the thing that really got me. I watched the news report at least 50 times. I analyzed every frame of the footage they showed, and each time my heart started pounding faster because there was something they weren't showing. In the original video I saw on my laptop, the man in the hoodie had turned to look directly at the camera, at me. But in the version on the news, that part was gone. It was like it had been edited out, like it never even happened. I was so paranoid by the third day that I'd started taping over all the cameras on my devices, laptop, phone, tablet, everything. I even put my Alexa in a drawer because at that point, I didn't trust anything with a microphone. But none of that mattered because the next message didn't come through my laptop. It came through my phone. It happened around midnight. I was half asleep on my couch, the TV muted, but still playing some true crime doc I wasn't paying attention to. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and when I saw the notification, my stomach dropped so hard it felt like I was falling. It was a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations, player. You've completed round 1. Are you ready for round 2? I almost threw my phone across the room. My brain was scrambling for an explanation. Maybe this was some sick scam. Maybe someone was watching my browser history and trying to scare me. But that didn't explain the gas station video, or the guy looking straight at me. Another text came through. Running isn't an option. Refusal equals disqualification. Disqualification equals death. Reply YES to continue. I swear, I could feel my chest tightening, like my heart was trying to claw its way out. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I just stared at the screen, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. And then, my phone buzzed again. Disqualification begins in 30 seconds. Suddenly, my TV flickered and turned off. My lights shut off too, plunging my apartment into complete darkness. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not in my apartment, but outside my door. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I froze, barely breathing. I didn't even think about calling the cops. What would I say? My building doesn't have a doorman, so anyone could have gotten in. But somehow I knew this wasn't just some random person. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Then came the knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks that echoed through my apartment. I couldn't move. My brain was screaming at me to grab something, anything, to defend myself, but my body was paralyzed. The knocks came again. 5 seconds remaining. My phone buzzed. That snapped me out of it. With trembling fingers, I typed YES and hit send. The moment I sent the text, the power came back on. My TV blinked back to life, the true crime doc resuming, like nothing had happened. The footsteps outside my door, gone. I didn't sleep that night. Every little creak of the building made me flinch, and I kept thinking about those knocks. Were they even real? Or was my mind playing tricks on me? The next morning, I got another text. Welcome to round 2. Your task is simple. Decide their fate. Underneath the text was a link. I didn't want to click it. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me not to, but I didn't have a choice. I was too deep in this thing now. The link opened a live stream. The setup was simple. A man tied to a chair in a dark room, his face bloodied and bruised. He was sobbing, struggling against the ropes, but it was clear he wasn't going anywhere. Next to the stream was a poll with 2 options. 1, let him go. 2, end it. What the hell was this? Who was this guy? Was this some kind of hostage situation? I stared at the screen, my brain flipping between 100 different thoughts at once. And then the chat started popping off. Welcome, new player. This one's gonna be fun. Better make the right choice, buddy. We're all watching. I could barely breathe. There were hundreds of people in the chat, all of them egging me on. My mind was racing. Was this real? Was this guy's life actually in my hands? Then I heard a voice, a deep, distorted voice, coming through the stream. Choose, player, or we'll choose for you. The timer appeared on the screen. 60 seconds. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. What if I let him go and they came after me? What if this was all some elaborate setup to see how far I'd go? My hands hovered over my keyboard, sweat dripping down my face. 30 seconds. The man in the chair was screaming now, begging for his life. His voice was muffled, like his mouth was taped shut, but I could hear the desperation. I wanted to throw up. 15 seconds. The chat was going insane. People were typing all sorts of horrible things, urging me to pick option 2. My heart was racing so fast, I thought it might actually stop. 10 seconds. 9. 8. I closed my eyes and clicked option 1. The stream froze for a moment, then went black. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Interesting choice. Round 3 begins soon. Prepare yourself. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Whoever, or whatever, is running this thing is 10 steps ahead of me. They know where I live. They know what I'm doing. Hell, for all I know, they're watching me type this right now. I keep telling myself I should go to the cops. But what would I even say? How could I explain any of this without sounding like I've lost my mind? All I know is that this isn't a game anymore. It never was. And round 3? I don't think I'm getting out of that one alive. Edit 1. I've seen your comments, and yeah, I know I need to get out of here. But where do I go? If they found me once, they'll find me again. Edit 2. For those asking, I didn't see what happened to the man in the chair after I picked option 1. I'm trying not to think about it. I don't think I could handle the answer. I'll update you if anything else happens. But if I go quiet, you'll know why. I thought I'd reached my limit. I thought nothing could scare me more than that live stream. That moment when I realized I was part of something way beyond my control. But I was wrong. What came next wasn't just fear. It was something darker, something primal. It's been a few days since I picked option 1, since I let that guy live, or at least tried to. I don't know what happened to him after the stream cut out, but I haven't been able to get his face out of my head. The way he looked into the camera, like I was the one holding him hostage. I don't even know why I'm bothering to write all this down. Maybe it's to keep myself sane. Maybe it's because I know there's no way out, and I want someone to know what happened to me when I'm gone. Either way, here's what happened next. It started with the smell. I woke up to it. Something rancid, like spoiled meat, mixed with rotting garbage. It was so strong I gagged the second I opened my eyes. For a second, I thought maybe my fridge had died overnight or something, but the closer I got to my bedroom door, the stronger it got. When I opened the door, I almost threw up. There was blood everywhere. My entire living room looked like a crime scene. Thick, dark red streaks smeared across the floor, splattered on the walls, and dripping from the ceiling. It was still wet, glistening in the pale light coming through the blinds, and in the middle of the room, sitting on my coffee table, was a plastic bag. The bag was tied shut, but it was clear what was inside. A human hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My brain just shut down, like it was trying to protect me from whatever the hell was going on. I stumbled back into my bedroom and slammed the door, locking it behind me, like that would somehow make me safe. Then I heard it. My phone buzzed from the nightstand. Round 3 has begun. Open the bag. I stared at the text, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. Number. No way. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't playing their game anymore. But before I could even think about what to do, another text came through. Failure to comply will result in disqualification. Disqualification equals death. Open the bag, player. And then, just to drive the point home, I heard something outside my bedroom window. A scraping sound, like nails dragging across the glass. I live on the 3rd floor. I didn't check. I didn't want to know what was out there. I just grabbed my baseball bat from under the bed. Yeah, I know how useless that sounds, and crept back into the living room. The smell was even worse now, like it had seeped into the walls. My stomach churned as I walked toward the coffee table, my bare feet sticking to the blood-soaked floor. I kept telling myself this wasn't real, that this was some elaborate prank, that none of this could possibly be happening. But the bag was real, the blood was real, and the second I opened that bag, I realized just how real this nightmare was. The hand inside wasn't just a hand, it was a message. Carved into the palm were the words, "Make them pay." I barely remember what happened after that. I think I just sat there for hours, staring at the hand like it might come to life and start pointing fingers. It was almost morning by the time I finally worked up the courage to check my phone again. There was another text waiting for me. Your target is name redacted, address sent, task, collect their blood, no exceptions, no delays. And just like that, my phone buzzed with a notification, a location pin. I recognized the address immediately. It was a little diner a few blocks away, a greasy spoon I'd been to a dozen times with my buddy Ryan. The realization hit me like a freight train. Whoever this was, they weren't just playing with me. They knew everything about me, my friends, my habits, my city. I wanted to throw my phone at the wall. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit there, staring at that pin like it was a death sentence. Another text. Failure to complete the task will result in your own blood being collected. TikTok, player. I don't know how I ended up at the diner. My memory of that night is a blur, like my brain shut off and let something else take over. I remember walking through the streets, the bag with the hand tucked into my backpack, the bat swinging loosely in my grip. I remember the stares from the few people I passed, the way they gave me a wide berth, like they could sense something was off. When I got to the diner, it was almost empty. Just a couple of truckers at the counter and a waitress refilling their coffee. I spotted my target immediately, a man sitting in a corner booth with his back to me. He looked normal enough, late 40s, balding, wearing a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, and he had no idea I was there for him. I sat down in the booth behind him, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My hands were sweaty, trembling, as I pulled out my phone and typed a message to the number. Who is he? Why me? The reply came instantly. He's a murderer, just like you will be if you fail. Collect his blood, player. I wanted to throw up. I didn't even know if what they were saying was true. Was this guy really a murderer? Or was this just another sick game to see how far they could push me? It didn't matter. Not really. Because as much as I hated myself for it, I knew I was going to do it. I didn't have a choice. I followed him when he left the diner. It was almost midnight by then, the streets deserted except for the occasional car passing by. He didn't notice me trailing him, didn't even look back once. I could hear my own breathing, heavy and ragged, as I tightened my grip on the bat. When he turned into an alley, I knew it was now or never. I don't remember hitting him. I don't remember the sound the bat made when it connected with his skull, or the way he crumpled to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. What I do remember is the blood. There was so much of it. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring down at his body, the bat still clutched in my hands. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. I couldn't. My mind was blank, my ears ringing as I knelt down and did what they told me to do. I collected his blood. When I got back to my apartment, there was another message waiting for me. Round 3 complete. Well done, player. Round 4 begins soon. Sweet dreams. I don't know how much more of this I can take. My hands are still shaking as I type this, the smell of blood still clinging to me, no matter how many times I shower. I keep telling myself I'm not a killer, that I didn't have a choice. But deep down, I know that's not true. I made a choice, and now I have to live with it. Or maybe I won't. Edit 1. To everyone asking why I didn't go to the cops, do you think they'd believe me? Hey, I got forced to kill someone because a website told me to. Yeah, that'll go over great. Edit 2. For the people calling me a monster, you're probably right. But until you've been in my shoes, you don't know what you'd do. Trust me, this isn't a game you want to play. Part 4 is coming soon. If I make it that far, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. After what I'd done, the thought of closing my eyes, even for a second, was impossible. I was scared of what I'd see. The man's face, his blood, my hands covered in it. Every time I blinked, it was there. But it wasn't just guilt gnawing at me. It was the waiting. I knew round 4 was coming. The texts always came when I least expected them, like the universe was waiting for me to let my guard down before throwing me deeper into this nightmare. Except this time, I didn't wait for the text. It started around 2 a.m. The silence in my apartment felt heavier than usual, like the air was pressing down on me. I kept pacing back and forth, the squeak of my sneakers on the blood-stained floorboards the only sound. Yeah, the blood was still there. I tried cleaning it up earlier that day, scrubbing until my arms felt like they'd fall off, but it just wouldn't come out. I don't know what's worse, the fact that it's stained, or the fact that it's a constant reminder of the game I can't escape. By 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. Sitting in that apartment was suffocating, like being trapped in a coffin. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and my hoodie, and headed out. Austin at night can be weird. It's not like New York or LA, where the city never sleeps. Once you get past the bars and the college hangouts, the streets are empty. Eerily so. Even the homeless camps under the overpasses felt lifeless. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just kept walking, hoping the cool air would clear my head. But instead, it did the opposite. That's when I noticed the car. It was a black SUV, tinted windows, the kind of car you'd expect a government agent or a hitman to drive. I first spotted it parked across the street from my building. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Lots of people park in my neighborhood. But when I turned down a side street, about a mile from my apartment, I noticed it again. It wasn't close, but it wasn't subtle either. I could see it creeping down the road, the headlights off, the engine barely audible. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. After everything I'd been through, of course I was going to imagine things. But when I turned down another street, one that looped back toward downtown, it was still there. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I tried to play it cool, walking at a steady pace, like I didn't notice. But inside, I was screaming. And then my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I knew what it was, but I couldn't ignore it. My hands were shaking as I pulled my phone out of my pocket and looked at the screen. Running won't help, player. You can't escape the game. I stopped in my tracks. The SUV stopped too, about half a block behind me. For a moment, everything was dead silent. No cars, no wind, nothing. Just me standing there, clutching my phone like it was some kind of lifeline, and that black SUV looming in the distance like a predator stalking its prey. Another text came through. Turn around. I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I bolted. I sprinted down the street, my sneakers slapping against the pavement as I weaved through alleys and side streets. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get as far away from that car as possible. But no matter where I turned, no matter how fast I ran, I could hear it. The low growl of the engine, the tires crunching against the gravel. They weren't chasing me fast. They didn't have to, because they knew I couldn't escape. Eventually, I found myself in an old industrial area. You know the type. Abandoned warehouses, broken streetlights, everything smelling like rust and damp concrete. It felt like the kind of place where bad things happen, the kind of place where no one would hear you scream. I ducked into one of the warehouses, my chest burning from the effort of running. The inside was dark, the only light coming from a flickering fluorescent bulb near the entrance. The air was thick with dust, and every sound I made echoed endlessly. I crouched behind a stack of crates, trying to catch my breath. My phone buzzed again. I wanted to throw it, smash it, into a million pieces, but I couldn't. Hiding is pointless, player. We see you. And then the lights went out. It wasn't just the bulb above me. Every light in the warehouse shut off, plunging me into total darkness. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but I could hear the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. They weren't trying to hide. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I didn't know where to go. The darkness felt alive, like it was closing in on me. And then, from somewhere in the black void, I heard a voice. It was deep, distorted, like it was coming from an old tape recorder. Round 4 begins now. No more running, no more hiding. I felt something brush against my arm, cold, metal, and heavy. My hand scrambled to grab it, and when I realized what it was, my stomach twisted. A gun. My phone buzzed. The glow of the screen, the only light in the room. There are 3 doors in this warehouse. Behind one is a way out. Behind the other 2 are consequences. Choose wisely. A dim light flickered on in the distance, illuminating 3 doors at the far end of the warehouse. They looked identical. Metal, rusted, and barely hanging on their hinges. The voice came again, louder this time. You have 1 minute, player. Fail to choose, and we'll choose for you. I didn't move. My legs felt like lead, my fingers gripping the gun so tightly, my knuckles ached. The doors loomed ahead of me, their shadows stretching across the floor like the teeth of some enormous beast. The clock was ticking. I made it to the doors with about 30 seconds to spare. Up close, they looked even worse. Each one was marked with deep scratches, like something had been clawing to get out. My phone buzzed again. The choice is yours, player. Choose wisely. I don't know what made me pick the middle door. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was luck, or maybe it was the false hope that it looked slightly less terrifying than the others. I reached for the handle, my hand trembling as I turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into the darkness. And that's when I realized I wasn't getting out of this. Not really, because this wasn't about escape. It never was. I don't remember how long I walked down those stairs. It felt endless, the air growing colder and heavier with every step. The gun in my hand felt useless, like a toy in the face of whatever was waiting for me. When I reached the bottom, I found myself in a small room. The walls were covered in the same black paint as the website, and in the center of the room was a single chair. Someone was sitting in it. Their head was slumped forward, their body limp, but I could hear their breathing, shallow and uneven. I stepped closer, the floor sticky beneath my feet, and that's when I saw the note taped to their chest. This is the consequence of failure. Make your choice, player, or we'll make it for you. I can't write about what happened next. Not yet. All I'll say is this. The game isn't just about survival. It's about breaking you. And I'm already broken. Edit 1. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. They're always watching, always waiting. If you're reading this, please, don't let curiosity drag you into this hell. Edit 2. Round 5 is coming, and I don't think I'll survive it. You ever feel like the universe is playing a sick joke on you? Like you're the punchline to some cosmic prank that only makes sense to the people watching? That's how I felt waking up this morning. If you can even call it morning. There's no sense of time anymore. No day, no night. Just waiting. Waiting for the next move. For them to decide what happens next. I don't even remember falling asleep. The last thing I recall is staring at my bedroom ceiling, the gun still in my hand, the metallic tang of blood still clinging to the back of my throat. The blood, it's everywhere now, on my clothes, under my nails, streaked across the walls of my apartment like some grotesque piece of abstract art. I tried cleaning it, again, but no matter how hard I scrubbed, it wouldn't come off. It won't come off. I've stopped trying to explain what's happening to myself. Logic left the building a long time ago. I don't even bother questioning who's behind all this anymore. The game, the players, the watchers. It's all a blur, a shadow hanging over me that I'll never outrun. And today was the day it all came crashing down. The message came at exactly 3:33 p.m. I only know that because my phone vibrated so hard it fell off the coffee table, the screen lighting up with that familiar pitiless tone. Final round. Are you ready, player? No timer this time. No ominous threat of disqualification. Just that single question, like they already knew the answer, like they already knew I didn't have a choice. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my mind racing. Final round? What does that even mean? What happens after this? Is this where they kill me? Or is this where they push me so far I wish I were dead? Another text. Come outside. The street was eerily quiet when I stepped out of my building. No cars, no people, not even the sound of birds or the distant hum of traffic. Just an oppressive, suffocating silence that made my ears ring. There was a car waiting for me, a black sedan, sleek and spotless, with tinted windows so dark they looked like they absorbed the light. The passenger door swung open the moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, but there was no one inside, just an empty seat, waiting for me like a coffin with an open lid. I don't know why I got in. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the realization that I was past the point of fighting back. Whatever the reason, I climbed into the car, the door shutting behind me with a soft click that felt way too final. The car started moving on its own. No driver, no steering wheel turning, just the quiet hum of the engine as it glided through the streets. I didn't even bother trying to open the door or jump out. I knew better by now. It felt like hours before the car finally stopped. When the door opened, I found myself in front of an old run-down motel on the edge of town. You know the kind of place you only see in slasher movies or drug busts. Faded neon sign flickering above the entrance, half the letters burnt out. The room number was already waiting for me on my phone. Room 107. Don't be late. I didn't even hesitate this time. I walked straight to the door, the bat from the previous round still clenched in my hand. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode, but I didn't let myself stop. The door was unlocked. The room inside looked like every other shitty motel room in existence. Peeling wallpaper, stained carpet, a single bed with scratchy-looking sheets. But what really caught my attention was the chair in the center of the room, and the person tied to it. It was Ryan, my best friend, the guy who'd been texting me just a week ago, asking if I wanted to grab a beer. The guy I'd grown up with, gone to school with, shared every stupid secret with. He was beaten to hell. His face was swollen and bloodied, his shirt torn and soaked in sweat. But when he looked up at me, his eyes widened in terror. "Dude," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, what's going on? What the hell is this?" I froze. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. This had to be a trick, right? Some kind of sick illusion to mess with my head. But it wasn't. It was him. I could see it in his eyes. My phone buzzed. Final task. Choose. You or him. I dropped the phone. "What the fuck does that mean?" I screamed at no one, my voice cracking. "What the fuck does that mean?" Ryan flinched, his breath hitching. "Dude, please, just get me out of here. I don't know what's happening, but you've got to..." Another buzz. "Complete the task, player, or we will." That's when I noticed the knife. It was sitting on the table next to Ryan, gleaming under the flickering fluorescent light. Clean, sharp, waiting. "No," I muttered, backing away. No, I can't do this. I won't do this." Ryan started sobbing. "Please, man, just untie me. We'll figure this out together, okay? We'll go to the cops or something. Just don't..." The lights in the room started to flicker. "Final warning, player. Choose now." I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the pressure, the fear, the realization that I was in a corner I couldn't fight my way out of. Or maybe it was something darker, something they'd planted inside me from the very beginning. I grabbed the knife. The scream Ryan let out will haunt me for the rest of my life. It wasn't just pain, it was betrayal. Pure, raw betrayal. I didn't stop. I couldn't. My hands moved on their own, the blade sinking into his chest, over and over again, warm blood spraying across my face and dripping down my arms. His eyes never left mine, even as the light in them started to fade. When it was over, I dropped the knife and stumbled back, my entire body trembling. The room was silent now, except for the sound of my ragged breathing and the faint drip, drip, drip of blood pooling on the floor. My phone buzzed one last time. "Congratulations, player. You've won the game." I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face as I stared at Ryan's lifeless body. My best friend, my only friend, and I killed him. The room started to change. The walls melted away, the furniture dissolving into nothingness. It felt like the entire world was collapsing around me, and when the light returned, I was back in my apartment. But it wasn't the same. The blood was gone, the scratches, the stains, all of it, gone. My phone, my bat, even the knife I'd used, gone. It was like none of it had ever happened, but I know it did, because when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I haven't gotten any more texts since that night. No messages, no mysterious links, nothing. The game is over, but I don't feel like I've won. I don't go outside anymore. I barely eat. Every time I hear a knock at the door or a car engine outside my window, my stomach twists into knots. I keep expecting them to come back to tell me there's one more round, one more choice to make. But the scariest part? Sometimes, when I look at my reflection, I swear it's smiling back at me. Edit 1. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe I just need to get it out. Or maybe I'm hoping someone out there will read this and understand. But if you're thinking about playing the game, don't. Because once you start, you can never really stop. And sometimes, winning feels worse than losing.